So today, we're going to dive into something called cognitive adaptation training, or CAT for short. Now, this is a really fascinating method that helps people with serious mental illness build, well, a kind of practical toolkit right in their own homes, all to help them achieve greater independence.
But to really get it, let's start with a question that honestly we can probably all relate to on some level. Have you ever had one of those days where a simple task like getting dressed or taking your meds, or even just starting your day, feels like trying to climb a mountain? Well, for a lot of people, especially those with serious mental illness, that feeling isn't just once in a while. It's a daily reality.
To understand why that is, we need to take a look at what's going on inside the brain. Specifically, we're talking about something called executive function.
And what's so important to understand is that for many people, the biggest thing that predicts how well they can function in the real world isn't always the symptoms we hear about the most, like, say, hallucinations. It's often these cognitive deficits. So this is not a failure of motivation or will. It's a challenge with the brain's fundamental management system.
So, what exactly are these executive functions? Well, you can think of them as the CEO of your brain. Seriously. They're what allow you to plan out your day, to follow a recipe step by step, to ignore that little notification that just popped up on your phone while you're trying to work, and, to stop yourself from saying something you might regret later. They manage the whole operation.
Now, when these executive functions are impaired, it tends to show up in two pretty distinct behavioral patterns. Let's break those down.
Okay, so on one side you have apathy, and let's be super clear, this is not laziness. It's a real, profound difficulty in just initiating a task. Someone might need a little nudge just to get started. Then, on the other side, you've got disinhibition. This is kind of like the brain's filter is turned way down. A person gets easily pulled off track by whatever's around them, which means they might start a bunch of things but never finish, or just do them incorrectly.
And this example just illustrates the difference perfectly. Let's just take this simple act of getting dressed. Someone with that apathetic profile might not even get started at all. They might stay in their pajamas, or maybe they'll stop halfway through and forget to tie their shoes. But someone with a disinhibited profile, they might get distracted by all the clothes in their closet and put on, say, multiple shirts, or maybe a winter coat in the middle of summer simply because it was the first thing that caught their eye.
So, with that challenge clear in our minds, how do we help? Well, that brings us right to the solution: cognitive adaptation training.
Okay, now this is the crucial point. CADT doesn't try to fix the brain's executive functions with exercises or anything like that. Instead, it just bypasses the problem. It cleverly changes the person's environment. It uses physical things like signs, checklists, organized boxes to do the heavy lifting that the executive functions normally would.
And this is hands down the best analogy I have ever heard for it. Think about it. If you have poor vision, you don't spend years trying to train your eyes to see better, right? No, you get glasses. They're a tool that compensates for the problem. CDOT does the exact same thing for these executive function challenges. It provides the external structure that the brain is just having a tough time creating on its own.
So that all sounds really cool in theory, but what does it actually look like in the real world? What does this toolkit for the brain look like when you put it into practice? Just take a look at this. On the left, you've got a cluttered dresser. For a brain that's easily distracted, that is visually overwhelming. It's hard to even know where to begin. But on the right, you see a simple CAT intervention, bins clearly labeled for each day of the week. This completely removes the overwhelming number of choices and gives a clear, simple cue for what to wear. It's genius.
Here's something I bet a lot of us have seen before: a weekly pill organizer. This is a classic CAT tool. It basically offloads all the mental work of remembering, did I take my medicine today? Or which ones do I need to take? The environment itself does the remembering for you.
Now this slide, this is where you can really see the strategy at play. For a person dealing with apathy, every single extra step is a hurdle. I mean, just walking to the kitchen to get a glass of water might be enough to completely derail the task of taking their medication. So, by putting the pills and the water right there next to the alarm clock, you've reduced the task to its absolute simplest form. It's just brilliant.
And for any task that has multiple steps, a checklist is the perfect tool. It provides that sequence, that order that the brain might be struggling to create on its own. It just answers that constant question of, okay, what do I do next? This one here breaks down brushing your teeth into 4 simple, super clear steps.
Now, of course, this isn't just thrown together randomly. Therapists follow a really clear process. First, they'll do a deep dive assessment to really understand the person's specific cognitive profile. Are they more on the apathetic side or the disinhibited side?
Then they create a plan that's tailored just for them. And only then do they start to implement these specific, personalized interventions right there in the person's home.
This all sounds great, right? It makes so much sense. But does it actually work? Let's take a look at the data.
Oh yeah, it works. This chart here shows a study on medication adherence. The group that got the standard care, well, their rates of taking their meds were kind of lower. But look at the group that got CAT. Their adherence was way higher, and it stayed high. I mean, that is a life-changing difference.
And the benefits go way beyond just taking medication. This graph shows that people in the CAT program, that's the top lines there, they also had huge, sustained improvements in their social lives and their ability to work compared to standard therapy. They were just more engaged in their communities and in their own daily lives.
And honestly, this might be the most crucial point of all. These simple, practical supports actually help keep people stable and out of the hospital. By making daily functioning and medication adherence so much better, CAT has been proven to decrease the rates of relapse. And that is a huge, huge victory for someone's long-term health.
So what does this all mean when we put it together? What's the big takeaway here? Well, it's really about rethinking what support and independence truly mean. The big idea, the beautiful idea behind CAT is that care isn't just something that happens in a conversation in a therapist's office. It's also about how we structure our homes, our workspaces, our world. Creating a supportive physical environment is an incredibly powerful form of treatment that really empowers people and helps them find true independence. And that leaves us with a final thought. You know, SAT was designed for people with serious mental illness, but the principles behind it are universal. We all have moments, right, where we're stressed or tired, and our executive functions are just not at their best. So, how can we apply these lessons in our own lives? How can all of us design our own spaces and our communities to be a little more like those glasses for the brain, making life just a little bit easier for everyone?